The story is about a teacher named Luli who believes himself to be no more than an ordinary man. However, contrary to his modest self-perception, all three of his students have grown to become extraordinary prodigies in their respective professions. The first is a fearsome sniper, the deadliest killer in town. The second is a highly accomplished and successful business tycoon. The third is a miraculous and skilled doctor, renowned for performing medical miracles. Luli only remembers teaching them multiplication tables, health recipes, and self-defense techniques. Yet, they have evolved and improvised to achieve feats that defy belief. Could Luli actually be a top-tier master whose teachings elevate his disciples beyond imagination? Or is it merely a coincidence? Could such greatness truly stem from his lessons? Or is there more to this story? The story begins with protagonist having a strange, recurring dream. In the dream, a godlike figure in a yellow aura is talking about a malicious spirit coming again. The spirit calls him and afterwards attacks him, creating a massive phenomenon. This causes protagonist to wake as he is disrupted from his sleep again. He is completely obscure about the dream, and it has only caused him nightmares recently. But fortunately, if it wasn't for the dream, he wouldn't have woken up as it was already 9 o'clock and he was late for his job. It's not the first time protagonist has been late so far. He rushes to his school, fearing what his boss might be up to for him this time. Midway to the school, there's a robbery scene going on, where a burglar has taken a woman hostage who turns out to be pregnant. The scene gets intense when the lady seems to enter labor. The burglar sees this as a great chance to take advantage of the police. While the police seem under pressure and the burglar has his knife pointed towards the lady, even the snipers couldn't aim at the burglar as he uses the woman as a shield. The situation seems out of control. Just then, protagonist arrives there. At first, he is unaware of what's happening, stops there, and contemplates the situation. When he hears the pregnant woman is being held hostage, he is enraged by that. He pulls a stone-like object and throws it towards the burglar. While he is doing that, he turns into the same man he saw in his dream, the man in a yellow aura, the godlike figure. The stone is so fast-paced that it travels at the speed of light, cutting the arm of the burglar and severing it from his body. Everyone present is in awe and surprised, including the burglar himself, as if wondering who could do this. People watching the scene unknowingly say it's the sniper's job, while protagonist silently walks away without revealing that it was him who did that. The burglar is caught, and the woman is saved. As expected, protagonist reaches late, and without surprise he finds the principal furious. Protagonist tries to convince the principal why he was late this time, but the principal has other things on his mind. At first, the principal just scolds protagonist, but to his surprise, the principal shows him a letter that tells him he is fired from the job. Protagonist couldn't believe it and says that he was just awarded the best teacher last month as his defense. But the principal is stubborn and tells him that was in the past, and he doesn't have any students this time. He cannot be paid for nothing. As long as he has students, he could keep the job. As a last resort to save his only job, protagonist finally comes up with an idea to call his students, who he calls useless. However, the 3 students he was about to call were no ordinary or useless individuals but rather renowned, highly accomplished professionals in their fields. The first one, from the city of Country, Ecchi, is a cold, ruthless killer and sniper who is also the leader of the feared group Shadow Alliance. Her recent target being the Prince of Country justifies how powerful her nexus is. Jiang Lu, the second student, is the wealthiest individual in Jiangnan province and a formidable force to reckon with. She holds the power and wealth to buy almost anything money could attain. The last one is no different than the two. Huayu is the most wanted and miraculous doctor there ever could be in the country. The locals call her the human god, as she could even heal people when there was no hope left. But it is nearly impossible for people to get her appointment, as even the chiefs of police and powerful figures have to wait for her nod. Protagonist, unaware of their busy schedules, calls them. To their surprise, all 3 of them are more excited than protagonist and seem to anticipate the situation. They ask if protagonist is ready to teach them again, and they are more than ready for it. With utmost excitement, everybody arrives on time except for Jiang Lu. She is not only the wealthiest but also the most gorgeous among them all. Her exotic looks and eyes are enough to mesmerize any mortal being. She arrives late to class with her body dripping in sweat. The other 2 girls start teasing her about being late. While the playful banter continues, protagonist arrives. He swings his stick and tells the girls to get ready for the next class. The lesson is about understanding oneself and one's opponents. Protagonist chooses Jiang Lu to speak first. Jiang Lu, eager to impress her teacher, starts boasting about her grand business and how her family enterprise is #1 in her province. Protagonist is surprised, as he believes he has only taught her normal things. He tells her never to be overly proud proud of wealth and to remember where she came from. He downplays her achievements, suggesting she should focus on helping others instead of solely growing her small business. Jianlu feels ashamed and assumes that, in her teacher's eyes, her business still isn't significant enough. Next, it is Huayu's turn. Huayu tries to remain low-key and says she has just mastered basic medical skills and is treating ill people recently. Protagonist, unaware of her extraordinary skills, tells her that he has only taught her basic medical knowledge so she could take care of herself. He advises her not to treat others with such mild skills, as it could put their lives in danger. Huayu nods to what protagonist says, thinking that the skills she has now aren't up to the level her teacher expects. Before the turn finishes, Yiqing yells from the back. She seems super excited. Like the other girls who have a crush on their teacher, Yiqing yells in a pampered, childlike voice. Sir, I hope I can satisfy you with my skills. Yiqing showed her martial arts skills in front of the teacher. She proudly told protagonist that she had mastered martial arts, and that no one could beat her except for him. Yiqing, being the naughtiest one, started kicking the tables, aiming to break them. Protagonist immediately stopped her and told her to sit down in her place. Yiqing then asked, Teacher, why didn't you warn me that what you taught was just basic self-defense, and that I shouldn't go out looking for trouble? Protagonist replied calmly, If I had said that, would you have listened? Yiqing, with a proud smirk, responded, No, I wouldn't. I'm so powerful. Why shouldn't I go out looking for trouble? Listening to her, the other girls burst out laughing and started making fun of her. The class resumed. As the girls were reminded that they had only been taught the basics, and what they had achieved was supposedly just normal, Yiqing demanded that protagonist teach them something more profound and of a higher level. All of the girls agreed with her and started ranting about it. Hearing the word profound, protagonist suddenly snapped back to reality, his mind racing. Something was telling him that what he had truly taught them, and what they had accomplished, was far beyond what any human could ask for or achieve in a lifetime. Now finding himself in a difficult situation, as he had previously told them it was all just basic and that he hadn't taught them much, protagonist panicked. He suddenly collapsed to the ground, claiming he felt dizzy. All the girls rushed to him, bouncing near their teacher in concern, trying to make sure he was all right and wondering if it was his long-standing problem, amnesia. The class ends for the day, and protagonist comes up with a new idea, considering each of his students' unique skills and proficiencies. He announces that he will teach them individually for a week, focusing on their specific strengths and needs. The girls pause, pondering the proposal, before quickly coming up with a counteroffer. They will only comply if protagonist agrees to take them on a visit to his house. Protagonist hesitates for a moment, but ultimately gives a reluctant nod. The girls, now overjoyed, begin imagining mischievous and humorous scenarios in their minds. As the scene transitions, a bald man accompanied by a group of tough-looking goons is shown frantically searching for something, a red bird, which seems to have significant importance. The bald man warns his underlings that failing to find the bird could lead to serious consequences. Meanwhile, protagonist and the three girls arrive at his modest home. He introduces them to his elderly neighbor, Grandma Wu, a warm and chatty woman. Grandma Wu teases protagonist, claiming he has been keeping pictures of the girls in his room. Embarrassed, protagonist quickly changes the topic, asking if Grandma Wu has prepared the medicine for his stray cat, Xiao. Grandma Wu laughs and says she already gave the medicine to Xiao, insisting that the feisty cat doesn't need much care since it's strong enough to chase away the neighborhood dogs. However, protagonist persists, saying Xiao is showing unusual behavior and may need further treatment. Grandma Wu then chuckles and casually mentions that Xiao recently caught a red bird. At that moment, the bald man overhears the conversation. His face twists in anger and disbelief as he storms forward, loudly describing the red bird he has been desperately searching for. The bald guy tells protagonist to hand over the bird to him, to which protagonist agrees, saying that if the bird were in his home, he would give it back. Just then, one of the bald guy's goons points out the three girls standing behind. The bald guy turns to look at them, and to his surprise, their crisp and beautiful appearances grab his attention. He stops protagonist and makes an unpleasant offer, suggesting that he would let them go if protagonist agrees to leave the girls with him for some time. The bald guy, with dark and unknown intentions, speaks in a cunning tone. Upon hearing this, protagonist feels enraged but masks his emotions. Calmly, he responds with 2 points. First, he says it might not even be his cat responsible for the situation. Second, he makes it clear that he doesn't appreciate the remarks about the girls. The bald guy and his goons burst into laughter at protagonist's response. Stepping closer, the bald guy intentionally tries to provoke him into a fight. However, protagonist remains cool and collected, replying that he could demonstrate some skills he had taught the girls. Turning to Yiqing, protagonist asks, "What's the acupoint technique that can paralyze any part?" Yiqing excitedly shouts, "The quick point!" Without hesitation, protagonist demonstrates the technique. The bald guy's hand goes numb, and he screams in fear and surprise, unable to comprehend what just happened. Next, protagonist turns to Hwayu and asks, "What's the acupuncture technique that causes hallucinations and dizziness?" Hwayu responds, "The hard point." Before the bald guy can react, protagonist swiftly performs the technique. The bald guy collapses to the ground, dizzy and unconscious. Seeing their leader incapacitated, the goons grow furious and demand to know what protagonist has done. Remaining calm, protagonist replies, "It was just some acupuncture techniques." The enraged goons try to attack protagonist, but he maintains his composure and fights them off effortlessly using slick martial arts and acupuncture techniques. One by one, they are defeated. During the fight, protagonist explains their flaws, pointing out how their balance is off and how their attack methods could easily be turned against them. He systematically identifies their weaknesses, defeats them, and explains the methods behind his techniques. Once all the goons are down, it becomes evident that protagonist is no ordinary master but a true prodigy. Finally, protagonist tells one of the remaining conscious goons to call the police and advises them never to engage in such activities again. He gives them a chance to leave, emphasizing the importance of being good citizens. The girls, who had been watching in awe, are flattered by their teacher's skill and composure. Protagonist turns to them and asks, "What have you learned from this?" The girls think for a moment and answer that it might be about not limiting oneself and using techniques like acupressure. Protagonist corrects them, saying, "It means we must remain calm and not act recklessly just because we have some skills." The girls, as always, are flattered and admire their teacher even more. After that, they move towards protagonist's house. Since Grandma Wu isn't there, protagonist tells them she went to get help from Uncle Wang. He asks them to wait while he goes to prepare dinner. Just then, protagonist's cat, Xiao Bai, appears. The girls are instantly charmed by the cat's cuteness and try to pamper it. Frightened by their enthusiasm, Xiao Bai runs away, leaving them surprised and amused. Xiao quickly leaps onto protagonist's shoulder and hugs him tightly, creating an adorably heartwarming moment. The three girls, watching this scene, feel a pang of jealousy at the bond between protagonist and his cat. Xiao is no ordinary cat. Its eyes, one golden and one blue, give it a unique and mysterious aura. Protagonist talks to Xiao, mentioning the red bird it caught. With an air of pride, Xiao struts off as if it has accomplished a great feat. Xiao pushes open the door, revealing a cute red bird with striking blue eyes and vibrant red feathers. Yi Qing is captivated by the bird's cuteness and reaches out to touch it, but Xiao, acting as a protective guardian, grabs the bird and shoots Yi Qing a sharp stare, preventing her from getting close. The bird, like Xiao, exudes a peculiar charm. Protagonist gently calls out to the bird, and to everyone's surprise, it flies over and perches in his palm. Examining it closely, protagonist remarks, "It's a phoenix." Jinong Lu, skeptical, shakes her head and says, "That can't be right. A phoenix can't be so chubby and small." Hwayu chimes in, "And aren't phoenixes supposed to have dragon-like wings and sing and dance naturally?" Protagonist explains, "That's likely the adult form of a phoenix you're thinking of. This one is just a baby phoenix." As they marvel over the bird, Yi Qing suddenly sniffs the air. "Do you smell something burning?" she asks. Realizing he left a pot on the stove, protagonist panics. "The food!" he exclaims, and they all rush to the kitchen to save dinner. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the bald guy, who is abruptly woken up by a splash of water. Gasping and spluttering, he yells, "Who did that?" A large man in a black suit stands before him, exuding a cold and menacing presence. The bald guy immediately cowers, his voice trembling as he mutters. The gang's leader and a figure of fear stares down at the bald guy. "Did you lose the bird?" he asks in a chilling tone. The bald guy quickly kneels, pleading for forgiveness. "Boss, please, I'll find it, I swear." Dao doesn't spare him. He stomps his foot down on the bald guy's head, forcing him lower. "You'd better find it, or I'll make sure you regret it. No second chances." The bald guy, shaking, assures him, "I'll get it back, boss. I promise." Dao's gaze sharpens. "Who beat you and took the bird?" One of the men hesitates, but eventually speaks. "It was a teacher, boss." Dao's expression darkens further. "A teacher?" He lets out a humorless laugh, then slams his foot down again on the bald guy's head. "You're telling me you lost to some teacher? How useless can you get?" The bald guy grovels, his voice breaking as he pleads for another chance. Dao issues a final warning, his voice like ice. "Find the bird. Handle this teacher. If you fail again, you're done." The bald guy with his aura starts mumbling with each other about what they could do to get the bird back from the teacher. As they are already aware that they cannot beat him physically, they form an evil plan to bait the protagonist. One of the aura members tells the leader that he knows a computer guy who can do the stuff they want. Here in the training institute, the protagonist is about to teach the girls. Just then, the principal arrives at the class, furious and mumbling. The protagonist is surprised as to what could have happened. The principal tells him that the police are in the institute regarding a robbery case. He yells at the protagonist that it is not acceptable, as the reputation of the institute would be at stake because of this. The bald guy and his aura also also appear to be there, and they tell the policeman that the protagonist has their bird. Jiang interrupts them and tries to convince the officers that it is not true. The officers remain stubborn and ask the protagonist to come with them for investigation. Jiang again tells the protagonist she could help with her connections, but the protagonist denies it, as he is sure that he is innocent and would be released shortly. The officers take the protagonist with them. Just then, Jiang calls her secretary and tells her team about the incident. Jiang asks her to bring whatever help there could be in 15 minutes. The secretary quickly tells everybody to halt what they are doing and help master protagonist. As the scene goes forward, we see the Aura in the police station talking about their plans. It seems that they have made fake evidence with fabricated videos by the computer specialists they were talking about. The protagonist is taken into police custody and interrogated for the alleged theft. The officer tells the protagonist that he could be charged with 3 crimes if proven guilty: trespassing, poaching, and theft. The protagonist denies all allegations, asserting that he hasn't committed any such acts. However, the police insist they have enough evidence to back their claims. The officer presents a video to the protagonist. In the video, the protagonist is seen catching a bird in a prohibited area of a nature reserve. The protagonist is stunned by the footage. The video appears so convincing that even he struggles to discern whether it is real or fabricated. Despite this, the protagonist firmly denies the accusations, which only makes the officer more furious. The officer insists they have conducted a thorough investigation. Just then, there is a knock on the door, and someone bursts in. To the officer's surprise, it is the deputy of the police. Without wasting time, the deputy scolds the officers, reprimanding them for arresting someone without concrete evidence. The officer defends himself by pointing to the video evidence of the protagonist allegedly committing the crime. However, the protagonist defends the officers, stating that their actions were justified as they had substantial evidence to warrant an investigation. He asserts that the video must have been fabricated and tampered with by a skilled individual. The police officer counters by saying the video was thoroughly examined by the forensic team, which confirmed its authenticity. The protagonist remains unfazed and explains that the tampering might have been done with such precision that it eluded detection. Jiang offers to summon the best tech experts in the country to resolve the matter, but the protagonist interrupts her. He confidently states that he can determine the video's credibility in just 5 minutes, leaving everyone, including Jiang, astonished. Meanwhile, the 3 goons are peeking through the door, eavesdropping on the conversation. Panic sets in as they realize their plan is unraveling. They know they are doomed now that the protagonist has been granted permission to examine the evidence's authenticity. The situation takes another turn when another officer arrives, storming into the room and yelling, demanding to know who dared to claim the video was fake. He asserts that it was he who personally verified the footage. The bald guy and his goons quickly rally to his support. The officer confidently tells everyone that the video was verified 3 times and could not possibly be fake. The protagonist, unfazed, responds that he could tell it was fake just by looking at it. Everyone present bursts into laughter at this bold claim, with the bald guy mocking him, accusing him of bluffing. Undeterred, the protagonist plays the video and carefully goes through it frame by frame. He pauses the video at the exact moment where his back is turned. There, the face of the bald guy, crudely edited over the protagonist's, becomes unmistakably visible. The bald guy and his goons are stunned. Panicked, the bald guy begins ranting, accusing the protagonist of tampering with the video. Calmly, the protagonist explains that he had done nothing to the footage. This was the same original video the officer had verified. Realizing he is caught, the bald guy kneels down, admitting his crime. He confesses to poaching the red bird and attempting to frame the protagonist as a scapegoat. With a resigned smile, he begs the officers to arrest him, claiming that prison is his only safe haven. He reveals that Dao would have killed him if he had failed and pleads for his goons to join him, offering them the same escape. The officers, astounded, ask the protagonist how he could detect the video's tampering. They point out that human eyes can only process 30 frames per second, while the video was recorded at 60 frames per second. The protagonist simply states that he was born with the ability to see and process every frame. This revelation leaves the officers in awe. Meanwhile, the officer who originally arrested the protagonist seems visibly embarrassed. However, the protagonist praises him, assuring him that he was only doing his job and commending his loyalty to his duty. This reassures the officer and earns him respect among his peers. The deputy and others release the protagonist, and Jiang and the protagonist leave the police station together. As they are about to exit, Yi Qing and Huayu arrive, breathless, having rushed to assist the protagonist. Seeing the situation resolved, Yi Qing teases the protagonist, asking him to make up for the interrupted class by taking them to lunch. The protagonist, unable to say no to his girls, agrees, and they head out for a meal together, closing the scene. The perspective shifts to a dark, eerie room. Dao, trembling, kneels before a devil-like figure cloaked in shadows. Speaking in a shaky voice, Dao pleads with the figure, begging for another chance to retrieve the phoenix. The devilish figure, with a cold, menacing grin, refuses. He reminds Dao that the Supreme Master had demanded the phoenix as a birthday gift, and now it is too late. Dao must face the consequences. The figure utters a chilling command, summoning the Red Jackal, a fearsome and brutal beast. The Red Jackal emerges, a monstrous presence exuding raw savagery. It swiftly attacks Dao, tearing him apart in a brutal display. The devil-like figure speaks to himself, pondering who could dare challenge him with such audacity. His eyes gleam with malice as his sinister plans unfold. The scene shifts to the protagonist's house, where the girls are enjoying their meal. Yi Qing announces she has eaten enough, prompting Huayu to tease her, saying she might get fat if she continues eating like this. Yi Qing dismisses the comment, attributing her indulgence to the protagonist's incredible cooking, which she finds impossible to resist. Feeling the need to digest, Yi Qing decides to go out for a walk. As she steps outside, she pauses and calls out, "Come out!" From the shadows, the devil who killed Dao emerges. It becomes evident that Yi Qing sensed his presence and came out deliberately to confront him. Impressed by her perceptiveness, the devil remarks on her abilities. Yi Qing retorts that she could sense his foul intentions from 10 miles away. A fierce battle ensues. The devil launches the first attack, which Yi Qing narrowly avoids. She swiftly transitions from defense to offense, striking the devil and landing the first blow. However, the devil begins to counter her attacks, forcing Yi Qing to escalate her efforts. Just as Yi Qing believes she has the upper hand, the devil unleashes a powerful spell, summoning dark energy so immense that it forces Yi Qing to retreat. A lesser being would have been obliterated by the attack. The fight intensifies, with the devil gradually overpowering Yi Qing. Their battle turns into a desperate chase, culminating in Yi Qing being cornered in a dead end. The devil casts a binding spell, immobilizing her. As Yi Qing struggles to break free, the devil prepares a final, devastating blow, aiming to finish her off. Suddenly, a hand intervenes, stopping the devil's punch midair. It is the protagonist. Both Yi Qing and the devil are stunned by his sudden appearance. Concerned, Yi Qing urges him to leave, fearing for his safety. However, the protagonist remains calm, telling the devil that it's late and he should avoid disturbing others at night. The devil, enraged, attacks with everything he has, but the protagonist deflects each move effortlessly. His calm demeanor unsettles the devil, who throws a powerful punch, only to have the protagonist catch his fist. The protagonist remarks casually, "I'll release your hand if you choose to sit and talk instead of resorting to violence." The devil, infuriated by what he perceives as arrogance, retaliates with all his might. As a last resort, the devil casts a mind-affecting spell on the protagonist, claiming it will kill him within 10 minutes. The protagonist momentarily feels a discomfort in his head and begins seeing strange visions. He is transported into another realm, a surreal place that feels oddly familiar. In this realm, the protagonist encounters a godlike figure clad in a white gown, radiating immense power. The figure, who seems eerily familiar, speaks to him. The protagonist asks who he is, and the figure responds, "I am you, and you are me. I am the self you have forgotten." The godlike figure introduces himself as the Supreme Immortal Lord, the ancestor of 10,000 immortals. He recounts his legendary feats, debating with Dao, bestowing elixirs upon Chang, and slaying the Red Dragon. He explains that the protagonist is his reincarnation, his true self, obscured by the passage of time. The protagonist asks how he came to forget all this. The Immortal Lord shows him a vision. At the end of a great tribulation, he was on the verge of ascending to the spiritual void, the highest immortal realm. However, a devil of pure dark energy infiltrated his ascension. The devil threatened to infest the spiritual void and corrupt all creation. In response, the Immortal Lord made a bold decision to reset everything to zero. "A mere 1,000,000 years of cultivation is nothing," he said. "Starting anew is no burden." As the Immortal Lord fell from the spiritual void, the scene fades. The protagonist now fully recalls his identity and awakens to his true power and potential. The Immortal Lord's final words echo in his mind. "It is time to return. Your disciples are in trouble." The scene closes as the protagonist, now fully aware of his supreme heritage. Before we can learn more about this mysterious being, the chapter ends. Don't worry though, I'll be here to narrate the next chapters as soon as they drop.